Yo, what's up? It's Someone That's Someone, and welcome back to another story time. Firstly, thank you for 21,000 subscribers, another big milestone, and I'm really happy we've grown so far, and that all of you are here along with me on this journey. If you are new or don't know, at 20,000, I announced that every 1,000 subs after, we're going to release a new story time, and that's exactly what this release here is today. Now, I did make a post promoting a new story time, possibly on the time Evan and I mixed DXM and LSA. But looking back at my notes and seeing what happened, there's a few other stories I want to tell first. The DXM and LSA combo happened after our Chapter 1 playlist ends. The Chapter 1 playlist, The Beginnings of a Psychonaut, is a stage of my life where I've been exposed to and actively tried different substances. It's basically my introduction to psychonautics and how it happened, both subconsciously and consciously. So before we move on to that combination, other stories, and eventually Chapter 2, I want to wrap up Chapter 1 first. Also, keeping it chronological will help there be less confusion. But you guys should already see that today we'll be talking about alcohol, which I didn't even think about this before because it's just so casual and common, but it's played a huge role in my life at this stage. I'm going to get into my specific first time trying it, but also the time I willingly engaged and drank recreationally. Drinking played a huge role in my transition to using substances more commonly, especially in social settings. Which, if you're familiar with some of my older stories, you already know I'm no stranger to a party filled with alcohol. These days I will say that alcohol is far from being a substance I use though. In fact, I'd say I more so avoid using it and have a general distaste for it. A big reason for this is my discovery and experience with a multitude of other substances out there. Because alcohol was one of those early things in my journey. It tends to be a starter for most people. And maybe this is why I enjoyed it so much at the start. But my overall feelings and experience these days lines up pretty strongly with my first impressions of it. That is, before I even tried any. Before we get into when I tried it, I want to talk about how I was exposed to it from a young age and throughout my life growing up. I'll just say I was raised with a semi-alcoholic, so that kind of set the tone for me. This is one of my least favorite substances out there, and for some good reasons, besides all the negative physical effects that is. One of my earliest videos was actually on reasons why I don't like alcohol. It's had a strong influence in my life, much more than I'd like, and it's a necessity I do talk about this. So again, thank you for 21K. I love dropping these story times, and a lot of you seem to like them as well. So I'm really looking forward to the next one at 22K. But besides that, you already know to like, subscribe, and share the video. Without further ado, let's dive right into this story. Living with an alcoholic. So before I tried anything, I was exposed to alcohol on a regular basis. I won't get into the details too deeply, but my mom would drink here and there, ideally with family and close friends, and with me not really around. But at times, I would be around, and this isn't anything bad by any means. My mom wasn't an alcoholic and never overdrank like that, or let it get to her. Nor was the environment a toxic or harmful one to me either for the most part. But the main thing out of this was that I realized that the adults would be drinking something different than what I would be. Some weird drink called beer. I mean, it isn't ideal to be like 5 years old and to be around that stuff, but mainly I was coolin'. Now come along years later, when I'm like 8 or 9, and my mom would eventually meet who would become my stepdad. Now at first, I didn't really like this guy, but the more I saw him, I eventually really did like him. He would be cool with me, he got me into PC gaming more, specifically shooters, like the early Call of Duties. Then just do other stuff like a father should. Because, if you guys don't know, my biological parents weren't really around or able to take care of me. A big reason being, they were still kids themselves when they had me. The point is, I was cool with my stepdad early on, but as the years progressed, our relationship would regress. And a big influencer of that would be alcohol, on him and my perception of him and it. Now my stepdad would drink pretty casually when he wouldn't be working. He would mainly reserve it for weekends. And with him drinking, I didn't really think much of it. I pretty much had that casual perception that it was just something adults drank to loosen up and have fun or whatever. I really wasn't aware of the dark side of that, nor would I realize any of the signs that would lead my stepdad to drinking heavily. But slowly but surely, as he got more comfortable in our lives, when my mom and him moved in together, and eventually after they got married a year later, I started to notice a change. He went from drinking maybe a couple of beers to upwards of at least 5+ a night. He would start to be very loud when he would drink, like playing music really loud, or some movie, or just yelling out some things himself. which at the start I didn't really mind. It was all in good fun at first, and it was a nice change, because my mom would always like to keep things quiet. But eventually, it would get to the point where it would be very obnoxious and inconsiderate. Along with this, he would get very emotional about certain things, specifically when it came to politics and what's right and wrong in the world. And I mean like extremely emotional, where he would just get pissed at something. Like you could just be talking to him about something, and he'll just randomly go off on a rant. But the thing is, he would detail it with violence and wanting to cause harm to something. And I hated this shit, especially if I had some friends over or something. He would just go off and delay the fun for like a half hour and completely offset the vibe. Another thing was, he had a lot of guns, like rifles, shotguns, a bunch of pistols, even a bunch of military gear, like some grenades. And when he would drink, one thing he would do is go through his weapons and kinda get in the zone. Eventually later on, he would do some really scary ass shit. But just that vibe he brought in, I think influenced him into this state further. For example, one time, he had some beef with one of my friends, which he happened to be one of our neighbors. Reason being is, this friend was involved in a lot of gang-related activity, and he would often make serves and whatnot nearby, where my stepdad would see it. My stepdad just hated that shit and didn't want it around. So one night when he was just blasted drunk, he goes out there in the middle of a serve with a pistol out, threatening to shoot them if they didn't leave. My friend was probably only like 15 at the time, but basically, he scared the shit out of them and they booked it. But to even be doing some dumb shit like that, just going out there and risking your own well-being and your family's well-being is just ridiculous. Like I was scared for my stepdad's well-being, my friend's well-being, the risk of someone getting hurt or arrested, or even him accidentally making me or my mom a target by chance. And this would be far from the only altercation, but thankfully, I've kept it tight with a lot of people to where it hasn't caused me any trouble. But anyways, moving on, you guys know, relationships aren't going to be perfect, and arguments and fights will come up at some point. And that's just natural. You work through it with each other. But drinking, I think, made my stepdad much more stubborn and difficult to work with. And it would eventually cause him to be rude and mean with my mom and then me. Which with me, it was much more understandable to a degree. As a kid, I was fucking around and doing a bunch of shit I shouldn't have been. And looking back, I agree that some discipline that my mom wasn't able to bring was needed. But it would get to a point where it would be out of line. The thing is, he would find reasons to where he felt like he would be entitled to it. For example, because he paid most of the bills, because I was still a kid and had to listen, because he just knew more than me, because I would act out too much. Which granted, some of these do hold some good reason, but I don't think the solution needs to come with a mean-spirited attitude, nor does it justify it. The thing is, it can make him very derogatory, and he would make you feel very limited as a person with what you can do and just how intelligent you are. And just as a kid too, the sternness and just nasty attitude would affect me heavily on an emotional level, which I feel caused more resentment rather than an actual solution. But eventually his drinking would pick up, especially just in binges, like it would be common for him to kill a 24-pack, for him to stay up all night into the morning, drinking, playing games, and doing whatever. Then him just not taking care of his health as well when it came to it. At times, he would make my mom feel like shit, and eventually a few years later, he ended up having an affair. This was a super emotional time in my life because I basically felt betrayed, like he turned his back on us. This was like a week or two ordeal where they were just constantly fighting, and he was drinking the whole time. He was partially staying at his friend's house, and I just remember my mom crying a lot and just being really unsure what we would do. I remember one night in particular, he drove over from his friend's, drunk as ever, and basically broke the front door open because he didn't have his keys and none of us heard him trying to get in. It was like 3 in the morning or so, just so he can grab a few things, but it just turned into the biggest argument. I will give it to him though, although he talked up a lot of violence and had a history with it himself, he never got physical with my mom. It was mostly emotional abuse. He never hit me either, but there was a time I was acting up really bad at school when I got suspended for like a week or something. When I got home that day, I went to the backyard and was just chilling, but he stormed out saying he was about to beat my ass and shit. Like I said, he didn't hit me, but he grabbed my hair and shoved my face down into the dirt hard as fuck. Again, maybe I deserve this in a sense, but I think most people would agree you shouldn't be forcing your kids' faces down into the dirt, especially when technically that kid isn't even your own. Like I tried to get up, but he pushed me right back into it. Besides that, he would just be very authoritarian with how he would do things. and alcohol would just make this worse and more asinine. He would be a hypocrite about a lot of things too, which, if I ever brought up, he wouldn't fully take it in or acknowledge it, but disregard it or just flat out ignore it, which this caused me not to really respect him fully, and what I think is the root cause of us becoming distant between each other. I can go into more details and more situations, but the point is, while he could be a good guy at times, on a personal level, his alcohol usage brought out the worst in him, and he never really made a strong effort to get it in line. My mom will point it out frequently. Whenever he drank, he would get shitty. And even later when his friends were telling him to go to a meeting and whatnot, when the signs were much clearer and the impact much stronger, he would be stubborn and deny it was a problem. And I'm sure many others out there can attest that this can be one of the most frustrating aspects dealing with someone with potential alcoholism. The commonality of it, plus the inhibitions it can bring you, can easily alter one's perception of the severity of their state. But with that, my perception of alcohol had been altered and uninterested. I mean, just seeing how it made my stepdad and how he treated us while on it, it naturally just made me despise it and not really want to try it. There are certain outside influences that still made me interested in it, but I had no intentions of becoming a regular or heavy drinker. Technical first times plus wine. But I wanted to tell that because it really does show what my set was with alcohol before even really having any. It already had such a strong impact in my life. But let's get into when I actually consumed it myself, and what led me to use it recreationally. So for the first actual time, I was probably like 10 or 11. I was just curious, but already had some judgments in my head about it, that I probably wouldn't like it. Well, my stepdad left an open beer in the fridge one day, and I just decided to see what it was like. I took a sip, just a sip, and that shit was gross as ever. Like it was just some shit I wanted to spit out right away. And I'm kinda still like this actually. I think the main reason I was like this was because it was a bush beer, which, yeah, still kinda gross to me today, along with a lot of others. A Corona or a Modelo though, can be decent. But in general, I just don't have a strong taste for beers. But I tried it and didn't feel anything. Obviously a sip of beer isn't gonna do shit to you. But technically, that is my first time trying it. Now the first time I willingly tried it, it was around when I was 15 or 16. I was on a trip with some family up in Canada for my first time. My grandpa would go routinely and would normally get a log cabin for about a week. On top of getting to explore the country, be out in the wilderness and all that, as a treat, they got me a bottle of red wine. Unlike beer and hard alcohol, I always had a desire to sip wine. Partially I'd say the inspiration comes from my mom. I didn't really have a desire to get drunk or feel anything from it, but more so for the act and class of sipping on wine. And I had a glass of wine almost every night I was in Canada. I have to say, I didn't really notice significant inebriation or change in my overall state. Granted, it's only a glass of wine we're talking about, but still for my first time consuming it like that, I'm surprised I didn't get more of an effect, because these days, I'm certain I'll notice the changes a glass of wine will bring me. I'd say if anything, things got a bit duller. Like there was just less color and everything. Also there was a bit of dehydration, but for the most part, very mild. I would have wine again a couple more times back home on special occasions. But like Canada, there really isn't any time it stood out, other than just as a beverage with class. Kinda like how a cup of coffee can set the vibes. There is one night that kinda stands out, where I believe I drank 2 glasses of wine. We had crab legs I remember, and I was just watching One Punch Man as it came out recently, and also Angel Beats for the first time. I remember the show standing out as being very vibrant and engaging, which I have to give credit to the shows themselves because they're both great, but I'd say there was a slight twinge of recreation added on top. Recreational Experience. But enough of the dilly-dallying, let's get into my actual first recreational experience with alcohol. You could say this is the actual story for today, though this won't be too long or fleshed out. But this happened on a New Year's Eve. I believe I was in my junior year of high school. I didn't have any particular plans for the New Year's, and this kinda all unfolded a bit spontaneously. In this story, we got my good friend Marcel, who's been in a lot of the stories. I'm pretty sure it was him and his sister who invited me, which I don't even think I ever mentioned his sister in a video before. Maybe I did, but either way, they invited me over earlier that day to come over later. We'll call his sister Kate. Another good friend of mine, Jordan, was also going to be going over. He's been in a few of the stories too. Both these guys were also featured in my Let's Dive into Cannabis episode, where they helped me with some trials. Also there this night will be 2 of Kate's friends, We'll call our friends Jody and Stella. Now I had no intentions of drinking at all, and thought we would just hang out. None of us really did drugs like that. I mean, I did try cannabis before this, and was on codeine for a portion of my freshman year, but I never really saw that as doing drugs the way I do now. The way I do now recognizes the potential consequences of what careless drug use can bring, but I didn't have a strong interest to use anything at the time. The only one of us to really do anything would be Jordan. Besides having a Nick stick, he would occasionally smoke weed, swears, and has drank before this. Everyone else was basically fresh and had no history. But Jordan stops at my place beforehand, and then we head on over to Marcel's. We all knew each other and have hung out multiple times before. When Jordan and I got there, everyone was chilling in the living room, along with their mom, of course, who was more than happy to see us, and I have to say, she really just is the best. It'll be a while before we get to a story like this, but there's been multiple times where she's just watched over me when I've gotten way too messed up before, and has been cool about it. A lot of parents may flip out about that sort of thing, but she understands me and where I come from with my drug use. But in these early stages, where we were just starting off, a lot of it had to be hidden and done in secret. I think we ended up coming over around 8 or so. Their mom was drinking a glass of wine, like she normally would on such nights, which I think this made her tired, because she went to bed around 10 or so. I think we played a board game or two while she was up. Nothing extravagant, and we were just hanging out, enjoying each other's company. Like I said, I had no intentions of drinking, nor did anyone bring up anything up about it, or anything close to that. It all kinda happened on accident, and here's why. When I got there, I remembered the girls had a bottle of sparkling wine, which was eventually put in the fridge, and I would end up mistaking the vodka as the sparkling wine. But this wouldn't happen until a bit after midnight. We had our own countdown and whatnot, which was cool. And I remember the girls did grab some of the sparkling wine at the time, which I thought they left out, but they didn't. I don't remember exactly who brought it up, but I think Jody said something about drinking alcohol, which I didn't happen to catch at all. I don't know how I didn't catch this, maybe I was just on my phone texting someone or whatever, but their mom had more, of course, than wine. Every time I would go over, she would have a bottle of Grey Goose in the fridge. Marcel and Kate knew better not to touch this though, as their mom would certainly find out. But what they would take a chance on is an older bottle of vodka in the cabinet that she only touched once, said she didn't really like it, and basically forgot about it. But they got the bottle, and we were all sitting at the kitchen table. I had to be on my phone at the time, because I just remember hearing them talking about taking a drink. Like everyone was being really nervous about it. Not Jordan necessarily, as he wanted someone else to go first. It was understandable though, since it was basically their first time drinking like this, plus the risk of their mom just randomly getting up by chance. But I kept hearing things like, "You go first." "No, you take a drink first." And after like a minute of hearing stuff like this, I was just thinking, man, what the hell is the big deal? It's just some sparkling wine. So I was just fed up and grabbed the bottle like, "Give me that." I'm pretty sure Kate was holding it. But I with no hesitation just started downing the bottle, like gulping it. Going into it, in my mind, I had no care whatsoever what the flavor was going to be. I don't really like sparkling wine a lot, but I just did that to show these guys how easy it was. And never having hard alcohol before this, I didn't even realize what it was I was drinking. And I was like chugging this vodka down, like it was water. The only difference I noticed, there was this very clean and almost burning sensation, but it really wouldn't set in until I stopped drinking it. But I got down like a third of the bottle before Marcel came over like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa," and grabbed it from me because he thought I was going to drink it all. Plus, we had to be careful with it. They plan to replace the missing contents with water. But Jordan is basically shocked and comes up to me like, "I've never seen you drink anything, and you just demolished that. That shit must burn like a motherfucker right now." And I'm all confused, just trying to cope with my now intense burning throat. And I'm all like, "Wait, isn't that sparkling wine?" And then they tell me it was vodka. Which, just ridiculous how that happened. Looking back at it, it was pretty much fate itself. And me downing that much vodka easily inspired everyone else to start drinking on it as well. And soon enough, we were all feeling it. I remember things got somewhat wobbly, but I was mainly subjected to a strong state of euphoria. I felt very happy and loving towards my friends. It really brought out an extroverted side to me that can happen sometimes with alcohol. But that would mainly only happen in my early days with it. I don't remember exactly how the night unfolded, but some things do stick out. Now Kate and her friends were only a few years younger than us, easily within range where we could find each other attractive. Marcel himself had previously tried to hook up with Jody, though sadly she wasn't interested, though it would be different when it came to Jordan and I. I remember having a good bonding experience with the bros, of course, but this night the girls would be a bit intimate. Specifically, there was some games, but eventually it turned into this thing where we would just kiss each other. I'm pretty sure it started out with hugs, like we were no stranger to touch this night. Then I think the topic of kissing got brought up, then the girls kissed each other. I think they tried to get us guys to kiss each other, and we were totally against it, being none of us had that attraction. I think somehow they almost got Marcel and I to do it, but we backed out before anything went down. But then this turns into the girls and guys kissing. It started with it being a suggestion, and then seeing who would actually do it. Kane and I did first, I think, and I was just ridiculous with it this night. Like instead of just a little kiss, I came on looking to straight up make out with her, which she kind of reciprocated, but was mainly shocked by it at first. Then we did it a second time, and she was more into it. But I think this kind of turned Jody on, because she wanted to kiss me right afterwards, which I was kind of hesitant, considering Marcel, since I knew he still had some interest in her. But we tried to get Jody and Marcel to kiss, but she said she just couldn't, that he felt like a big brother to her. Which, too bad for the bro, he wouldn't be getting any tonight. Stella I knew was interested in Jordan. Jordan and Stella kiss. Also, Jordan and Kate I think. I also kissed Stella, not make out, but more of a simple kiss. Then I remember, Jody and I made out really hard. Like I'm talking deep tongue interlocking here. And that's just something with me and something I can admire, when a girl can make out good like a pro. And after this, the girls were just a lot more touchy-feely and whatnot. Like we were just chilling on the couch, and they would put their leg over me, or lay their head on my chest, just be a lot more close to us. Besides on Marcel, that is. I don't have the specifics, like what we talked about, what we did exactly throughout, but there was one video that was taken during this. I look really messed up in the face, but happy. I was randomly rubbing Marcel's head, because I think he just got a new cut, and it felt really smooth, and then willingly gave Stella a foot rub. Just to give you an idea, the state of the alcohol had put me in. I believe we had a few more swigs throughout the night, but that initial chug had really sent me. It had really put me in this light body feeling, and all I really wanted to do was be loving to everyone and have a good time. With how willing and casual the night went, considering what we did, it's clear the alcohol really got rid of our inhibitions. I'd say it also put me in a state where I felt like this night was much longer, and also it just really put me into the realm of being inebriated. But basically we hang and have a good time with each other. The thing is with Jody and I though, is that we wanted more. And I'd have to say the alcohol influenced that drive. I can say for certain it did for me, seeing how it affects me now. But she would be on me and then go on her phone to write some notes for me to read, basically saying for us to hook up once everyone goes to sleep. So that was kind of our plan, especially when it got to around 3. Marcel was the first to knock out on the couch, and Jody kind of influenced the rest of us to go to sleep, saying she was tired and whatnot. Of course I play along with this. Jordan and Stella I remember were hitting it off, but didn't have any intentions like we did. The girls end up going to the other living area in the house, then Jordan takes the couch next to Marcel, and I just chill next to him for a minute. I tell him what's up with Jody, and to act like he's sleeping. After about 10 minutes, and things are settled, Jody ends up sneaking over to me, and we end up going into Marcel's room. And I don't want to get too graphic here, but it gets pretty ridiculous. Basically, we start getting down and dirty, and I remember she's like scared the whole time that their mom is going to come in on us. But we make out, I end up touching all over her, she touches on all over me. The highlight comes with me fingering her, and I'll just say that shit was intense, yo. This being YouTube, I won't go into detail like that, but it was a good time. We were going to go further, but there was eventually a knock on Marcel's door, which scared the shit out of us. We were pretty much naked, and if it was their mom, we would have been so fucked. Before I could get dressed fully, Jody went to open the door, and it was only Kate and Stella, wondering where Jody had ran off to. And this concludes the fun we would have this night, as she went back with them and wasn't going to risk it again. We had a good 20 minutes or so of fooling around already. But after that, I went over to Jordan to tell him, but he was already sleeping. I wake up Marcel, and he goes into his room, and I take the spot on the couch and knock out. I wake up a few hours later, like at 7 in the morning, because Marcel and his mom both get up. I don't get up, but just kinda lay around for a little, just taking in what went down with Jody and the girls and how we drank that vodka. We covered our tracks really well though, and Marcel did a good job of giving his mom the impression everything was cool. But I got up and told Jordan what happened, and couldn't believe we did that. And then I told Marcel and pretty much got the same response. Eventually the girls got up and everyone knew what was up. I didn't have any signs of a hangover. I was a bit tired since I only got a few hours of sleep, but still more awake and able than I should have been, which these days I'll be much more likely to have one, though it is still pretty rare unless I'm drinking heavy. Jody and I got each other's numbers and had intentions on pursuing things further ourselves, though I'll say our attraction was mainly physical, as we just looked to hook up and whatnot rather than be in a relationship. Besides that though, Jordan and I peaced out with everyone because they had plans, and we went out to hit up Dunkin' for some breakfast. But that was basically that. It was a really fun night, but more importantly, it was like a seed that was planted in my mind. The recreational quality I got that night was one that I had never gotten before, and I have to say, it really just helped spark my interest to pursue substance use further, specifically recreational use. But recreational use in itself sparked more motivation and influence to do what I do now. So really, even though it was a small event, that accident thinking that vodka was sparkling wine really played a huge role in my life, and I just had to share it with you guys. Also, everything leading up to that prior that impacted my life and my perception of it. But that experience basically opened me up to the possibility of drinking socially, and it's what led me to all those party stories I've told early on with the channel. It's pretty crazy how something so small could lead to such a drastic change in my interest. But yeah, that's basically the story and my history with it. Of course I have a history afterwards with alcohol, but I'll be saving a lot of that for future story times. But this is really everything that details my first experience with it in multiple ways. It serves as a strong piece in this Chapter 1 Beginnings of a Psychonaut playlist. I'm sure a lot of you can find things about this that's very relatable. So if you enjoyed this story and want to see another, let me know down below, but also help us out get to the next milestone at 22K. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share the video. Feel free to support us on Patreon, and check out some of the other aspects of the channel, like the Discord, or submitting a report. There's only a few more episodes in Chapter 1, but a ton more stories I got stored up. And with the growth we've been having lately, I don't doubt it will be long before we're dropping the next one. Besides that, thank you for tuning in and watching. It's been Someone That's Someone, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.